Okay. Sorry for the delay. Thank you all for coming to the third workshop of Swiftschool. Today we'll be covering project 2, which is Guess the Flag. And then please use this QR code to sign in. I'll just give you a few minutes to do that. And then here are the QR codes to the slides as well as the Discord if you want to refer to them later on. And then before we get started, we'd just like to announce an ACM event that is coming up. So ACM hosts Hoth every year, which is Hack on the Hill. So it's a beginner-friendly hackathon hosted on the Hill, and it's a great experience to get introduced to hackathons. And there'll also be food, so we encourage you all to apply and encourage your friends as well. So the link is here to apply, and the deadline is February 26th. Okay, so the agenda for today will first be covering like a project overview and then going over some Swift fundamentals and then finally coding the actual project. So today we'll be building Guess the Flag, and it's an interactive, fast-paced guessing game that challenges players to identify flags from around the world. So in this project, you will build an engaging quiz-style game experience, present alerts that respond to user input, and customize the UI to move beyond the default iOS look. So first, getting started with some Swift fundamentals. To return multiple things neatly arranged on the screen, we can use HStacks, VStacks, and ZStacks. So HStacks arrange items horizontally, VStacks arrange items vertically, and ZStacks arrange items on top of each other to create depth. And by default, VStacks and HStacks place some automatic amount of spacing in between two views. However, if we want to control the spacing, we can provide a parameter when creating the stack. So in the example below, we pass in a parameter of 100 for the spacing. And as you can see on the right, this places 100 points of space in between the two lines of text. Similarly, we can also control the alignment of views with the alignment property. So in the following example, we pass in a leading parameter for the alignment, and this will push all the text to the left. And then the image on the right just shows some of the common alignment parameters that you can pass in. Moving on to spacers, VStacks and HStacks automatically fit their content and align themselves to the center. If we want to change this, you can use one or more spacer views to push the contents to one side. So in the first example to the left, we add a spacer below the 3 lines of text. And as you can see on the right, all the text is pushed upwards. Meanwhile, in the second example, we put 1 spacer on the top of the text and 2 on the bottom. And essentially, this will divide the space evenly between the 3 spacers. So 1/3 of the space will be on the top of the screen, while 2/3 is on the bottom, as you can see on the second image to the right. And just a general note about Z-stacks. Z-stacks don't have the concept of spacing because the views overlap, but they do have alignment. And Z-stacks draws its contents from top to bottom, back to front. So for example, if you have in your code an image and then text, it'll place the text on top of the image. And moving on to colors and frames, colors in Swift expand to fill all the available space offered. However, if you want to constrain a color size, you can use the dot frame modifier. And there are two types of frames, fixed and flexible. And then fixed, you want to specify the width and height that you want to constrain the color to, while flexible, you just set the width and the height to infinity. And then you can also create custom colors by passing in values between 0 and 1 for red, green, and blue. So, and the syntax is below. As you can see, I pass in a value for red, green, and blue here. And in Swift, there's something called the safe area. Swift UI keeps views within the safe area to prevent content from being hidden by either the notch or the home indicator. So as you can see on the right, this blue section is what we call the safe area. So anything above this notch or below the home indicator is not considered the safe area. But if you want content to fill the whole screen, you can use the .ignore safe area modifier. And this will fill the entire screen. So for example, if you have like a background color that you want to fill this screen, you can use the modifier. And then gradients are just a way to add customize your app or add some personality to your app. And they are made of several components, which include an array of colors, size and direction information, as well as the type of gradient you want to use. So in the example below, we are declaring a linear gradient, which would be the type of gradient that we're using in this case. And we pass in an array of colors as well as the start and end point, which are the direction. And there are multiple types of gradients in Swift. So linear goes in one direction, typically from the top to the bottom, but you can change this as well. There's also radial gradients, which move outward in a circular shape. And this is the syntax. You want to specify a start and an end radius. There's also angular gradients, which colors around a circle. And you want to specify the color array as well as where you want the center to be. And then just a note that the dot gradient modifier can be added to any color, and Swift will automatically convert this color into a linear gradient.
I'm sharing on that, and then I can share on my laptop.
You want the slides on this or you? Okay.
Cool. Can you guys see my screen and the slides?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So I'll be going over. Okay, cool. So I'll be going over the next bit of our Swift fundamentals and then starting us off with building our app as well. So let me go to the next slide. Okay, so the next topic we're going to cover are buttons. So buttons are basically flexible components that can adapt to a large variety of different use cases. And there are two main ways to define buttons. On the left, this is the more simple way to define a button with a closure, where basically you define button and then write the title you want for your button. In this case, it's delete selection. And then inside this curly braces that follow it, you add an action that you want to happen after a user might click your button. But this is kind of the more simple example with closures. But if you want some more like advanced kind of actions or more things to kind of happen after you click your button, you can also use named functions inside of your button. So in this case, the structure is kind of the same, except after clicking delete selection, we're defining an action that our button is going to take, and it's defined as action and then this function execute delete. So basically, when a user clicks this, it'll call this function execute delete, which in this case, it does the same, just prints out now deleting. But in case you want to kind of make the functionality more complex, this is a good way to kind of do that in a modular and clean way. Okay, and so buttons also have roles that we can assign to make them look better and also communicate the meanings of our buttons to users better and kind of add some more semantic meaning to them. So in this case, after we're defining our button, we're also defining a role. And in this case, we're defining it as a destructive button. So in this little screenshot on the bottom, you can see that by defining it as destructive, basically Swift UI just changes the color to red, which kind of gives the user a warning that this is kind of maybe a more significant action that they might take, and kind of highlighting that. And the two main types of roles are destructive and also cancel. Okay. And so you can also style your buttons using different modifiers. The main ones here are bordered, which basically gives a subtle outline and a low emphasis to your button. In this little picture below, bordered is the top example. And then we can also use bordered prominent to maybe give it like a filled background and have more high emphasis. And that's this button on the bottom with the blue background. And then also, if we want, we can change the tint of the color of our button. Like in the code example on the right, we're using tint and then defining our tint to be the color mint. That rhymed, sorry. But in this case, like the default color is just blue. But if we like were to define it as mint, then this color instead of blue would just be like mint or purple or any other color you might want for your background. Okay. And then, so buttons also have a way to customize them even more than just using modifiers. And that's by passing in a custom label using a trailing closure. So here, basically after defining our action, which is printing out button was tapped, we're defining this label where we're kind of just customizing it more by specifying like including padding, a foreground style, which is basically the color of that we want our text to be. In this case, we're defining that we want our text to be white, and then also defining a background color. In this case, we're saying that we want our background to be red. Okay, and then moving on to images in Swift UI, there are three main ways to create images. This first way is basically if you want to import your own image, you can import it into the assets folder in your project in Swift UI and then call it like this. So this is assuming I might have like an image called pencil in my assets folder, and that by declaring our image like this, it'll pull that image from that folder. Also, if we want to have an image that's more decorative, like a background, and we don't want it to be like read out to users in then we can define it as being decorative. And then the third way is to use some of Swift UI's default SF symbols from their icon collection. In this case, there also happens to be a symbol called pencil, and we're just defining it as system name, and then that we want the pencil emoji, which is this one, and then kind of to be able to like find a lot of these icons if you want to use them for your own project, you can just search up Swift UI SF symbols and you'll get a really long list of a lot of options you can use for your project. Okay, and also kind of now combining what we've learned with both buttons and images, we can also put images in buttons. So in this case, this button, we're like defining it using that more advanced label type that we talked about earlier. And we're setting basically our button to look like a image, which is this pencil icon. And then also if we want to include some text and an image, we can define the image to be, define the button to look like an image here in the introduction. And then also in our closure, just add the action that we want it to take, which is to print edit button was tapped. And then this is just another kind of way building on to the slide that we used before, which is again using our label type for more customization. So in this case, we are kind of having both text and also an image, and then we're also customizing how our button looks with the image and how our text looks by defining like padding, foreground style, and background again. And just a note, we kind of went over H stacks in the beginning, and this kind of layout can also be done with H stacks, but normally when we are styling like buttons or images and when we're styling buttons, it's more helpful to use labels because SwiftUI will kind of make a smarter decision using labels and automatically decide formatting based on the available space and the layout on however the UI or iOS version that the user is on looks like. Okay, and then now moving on to alerts. So SwiftUI alerts are one of the most common ways that you can alert or notify users when something important happens, like an error, a confirmation, a warning, basically just saying that something is happening to the state that's changing and the user kind of needs to pay attention or like choose an action afterwards. And so alerts contain a title, a message, and contain one or two buttons to prompt the user to take action after showing them the alert. And alerts are controlled by using a state variable that tracks whether or not the alert is showing. So SwiftUI will watch this state, and basically whenever it changes, it'll decide whether it wants to show the alert or not. So in this case, we're defining it as at state is a private variable showing alert. And originally, it's good practice to set it to false, which means our alert is not showing. But as soon as this variable changes, which might be like the result of a user action or something, once it changes to true, then our alert will show. And so this is kind of a basic alert example. There's like a lot of text on the screen, so I'll break it down in the next few slides, but just a high level overview is in the beginning, we're defining that state variable outside of our view function, and we're originally setting it to false. Then inside of our view, basically, we're defining a button called show alert. And this means that like when the user clicks this button, show alert, it'll set it to true. And then here we have our alert kind of functionality, which says that when showing alert is kind of like the variable we want to track. And then when it changes, then we want to pop this alert up. And just like to show you guys what that looks like, here, this is the button showing alert, and it's initially false, but as soon as I click it, it turns to true, and then this alert button pops up and it says important message, please read this, and then has our two options for cancel or delete. Okay. And then, so just really quick breaking down the alert modifier. So basically here, initially we're going to define the title of our alert, which here, if we look again, it's basically this header title in bold, important message. Then we're going to define the variable state that we want to watch to decide whether we're showing our alert or not. In this case, it's just called showing alert. And then inside, we're going to define what our two buttons are. In this case, we can see it's like delete and cancel. And right now, there's like no actions in this closure, and they're both empty. So when we click these buttons, our alert will just disappear. But if you want something more to change with how your app looks or make some sort of different action take place, you can also add like another call to a function or something more inside these closures. Okay. And then here also we can add like a small message to go along with our alert. This one says, please read this. And then if we look here, that's just like the small text in the bottom for if you want to give any more information to your users. Okay, cool. So that was mostly it for our Swift fundamentals. And now we're going to go on to applying some of what we learned and what we've been learning in the past few weeks onto building the project, Guess the Flag that Michelle described earlier. Okay. So first, we have like some images that we're going to be using for this project. So if you guys can go to this link and download this zip file with the images, I'll give like a few minutes just to do that really quick. We'll be using them in our project. And can someone also like paste this link in the Discord? Okay. And we'll also paste this link in the Discord to make it easier to access. Okay, is everyone's or is anyone still working on downloading the zip file and might need a minute or so more? Yes. Basically like one of the things is like we need these pictures of flags for our project. So the zip file just contains all those pictures we're going to be using in our project. Oh, yeah. Okay. I think if it's easy also to just like type the link in your browser. Does anyone need like a minute or two more, maybe? Okay. Okay, I think we'll move on to start working on our project. And if you're still working on downloading the images or need them, then someone from one of the half off. Yes. You have to download like the entire GitHub, yeah, repo. Yes. Yes. Okay, maybe we'll start in like two more minutes just to let everyone have time to download. Okay, I think is everyone good to go? Maybe with the pictures. Okay, cool. Um, awesome. So now we'll go kind of into setting up our project on Xcode and then um starting to code it up. Okay. So I think we probably went over this last time when we worked on our first project during Swiftschool a few weeks ago, but I'll just walk through it again really quick. So to make a new project, I'm gonna go click on in file, go to new, and then click on new project, and then make sure I have iOS clicked and that my application type is a app. And then from here, I'm just gonna name this guess the flag. And I might have already created a project with the same title, so I'm just gonna say guess the flag 2 just in case. And for the other settings, you can kind of put anything for organization identifier here. I just put UCLA, but you want to make sure that your interface and language is Swift UI and Swift. Okay, and then I'm gonna create my project. I didn't go over that yet. I'll go over it in a quick second. Just making a new project. Yes. Okay. Awesome. So the first step right now that we're going to go over is using those images that we just downloaded and adding them to our project folder. So I'm going to click on assets here in my project, and then I'm going to go to my downloads and find this folder that I downloaded from the GitHub repo. And you're going to notice there's like, and sorry, and I'm going to then click on Swift UI. There's like a classic folder and a Swift UI folder. So click on the Swift UI one. And then here I'm going to click on project 2 dash files. And then here I'm going to see a bunch of these different flag images, like Estonia, France, Germany, so on. And these are basically the images that we're going to want to use for our project. So to copy them in right now, I'm just going to highlight all of these pictures. And you might notice that like for each country, there's 2 flags. One of them is 2x and 3x. And this is basically they're the same image, but basically they're different resolution qualities. So Swift UI will decide based on whatever iOS kind of or iPhone screen that it's displaying on, which resolution quality to use. But like here we can see that they're kind of mentioned as a single item, but then when we click on it, we can see that there's both that 2x and 3x image, which is just for different resolutions. Okay. Was everyone able to copy the picture of the flags into their project? Yes. All of the flags, yes. Okay. Okay, so once we have our flags here, then we can move into our content view file, which is where we're going to be doing most of the code for our project today. So initially, in this first step, basically what we're going to be doing is defining some of the properties to store the data for our game. So first, that's gonna be a array of all the country names that we have relating to all of the flags that we just imported in. So bear with me real quick. I'm gonna type them all out. First, Estonia, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Nigeria, Poland, 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 Spain, UK, Ukraine, and the US. Okay. So these are all the countries that we're going to be using and kind of cycling through for the images that we just imported. And then I'm going to define another variable called correct answer. And I'm going to define it as a random variable. So I'm going to do int.random and then say that the range that this variable can be in is 0 to 2. And basically we're doing this because if you remember that screenshot of the game we had in the very beginning, basically what this game is that at any given point, we're going to be displaying 3 flags to the user, and we're going to have them we're going to have 3 flags displayed to the user, and then we're going to say like, click the flag of the US. And that's going to be randomly kind of decided from the 3 flags that we have. And then the user is going to want to, out of those 3 pictures, click the one that is the correct one. So this is just basically choosing which of those flags is going to be our correct answer. Okay, so now that we have the data for some data variables defined for our game, we're going to go into our actual UI and start editing what the user is going to see. So going into this VStack, you can just delete like whatever the default kind of Swift UI boilerplate was there. And then we're going to say that we want to display text that says some instructions to the user. So tap the flag of, and then we're going to say tap the flag of countries, and then the index of the correct answer. Okay, so in this case right now, it's like choosing it between Estonia, France, and Germany, because those are those are our index 0 to 2. And I guess in this case, it randomly probably chose that the variable was set to 0. So that's why on our screen, Estonia is shown. Okay. So now that we have this text, we want to also actually display our flags. And we could just add this like to the current VStack we have right now. But in order to kind of make some of our display look a little bit cleaner and more modular, I'm actually going to define a second VStack and specify that I want the spacing for this to be 30. And then I'm going to wrap this. I'm going to use that to kind of nest in this other VStack that we just wrote before and put it inside of this one. Okay, and then underneath this one, I'm going to define a for loop. So for each is from 0 to 3. Basically saying that I want to print out my 3 random flags that are just chosen. And each of these flags is going to basically be a button. So I'm going to say image, countries, and then number. Okay. Oh, no. Okay, cool. And now we can see on our screen that underneath our text, we have these 3 flags displayed. And if I try to click on them, it kind of looks like it's a button and something should happen. But right now, because we don't have any action defined, nothing's actually happening. But technically, these images are defined as buttons. Okay. And but like some of these flags, as we can see, also have white in them, which can kind of get a little bit confused for our background. So in order to make that a little bit clearer, I'm going to change my background color to be blue, so then we can more clearly see kind of and differentiate where the flags actually start and where the background begins. And I'm going to do this by defining a Z stack. So I'm gonna do Z stack, and then I'm gonna copy paste this nested, these two nested V stacks that I have and put them inside of our Z stack. And a lot of the time, this might seem kind of confusing because we're like nesting so many stacks in between each other, but a lot of Swift UI, in order to kind of format things properly, is based on nesting different stacks within each other. Okay. And so now within our Z stack, I'm going to define our background color to be blue. And I'm going to do ignore safe area so that the top and sorry, ignore safe area so that um the entire screen is filled. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. I think that probably came in the default with the view. So you can just delete that dot padding that's there. And then also like this text is black right now, so it's not super readable on our blue background. So I'm just gonna do foreground style white to change the color of our text to be white. Okay, cool. So this is kind of like the beginning of our project. We have our baseline instructions, and then we have these buttons, but right now they're not clickable. And I will hand it over to Jaivin to finish the rest of our demo.
Let me share my screen. Okay, so we should be somewhere around here. Um, okay. The next thing we're gonna do is kind of make these buttons actually work because right now they don't do anything, they just exist. So the first thing we're gonna do is over here where we have our list of countries, we're gonna add this dot shuffled. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to shuffle it so the countries aren't in the same order every time. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make it so that when these buttons are tapped, something is going to change. So let's make a new variable. Let's call it title. And we're going to set that equal to an empty string right now. And then we're going to make another variable. And we're going to call that is title shown, or yeah, and we're going to set that equal to false right now. So now for our function, we're going to come over here outside this curly brace, and we're just going to do func. We'll call it flag tapped, right? And then we're going to do this underscore here, and we're going to say number and type int. So what this syntax does is it basically creates it's taking an argument number of type integer, right? And then so what's going to happen inside this function? Well, we're going to check if the number is equal to the correct answer. We are going to change the title to be equal to correct. Correct. Otherwise, we're going to set it equal to wrong. And then the last thing we're going to do in this function is we're going to change that state variable over here, is title shown. So we're going to say is title shown equal to true. Now, when we click these flags, you'll notice that nothing happens. And that's because we actually haven't implemented this function, right? There's nowhere where this function is actually being called like in our code. So we're going to add an alert. And we're going to add it right here. So we're going to say dot alert, right? And when the alert shows up, we want to display the title. And then we want the alert to show up when is title shown is true, right? So what this is saying is it's going to make an alert, it's going to display the title, and it's going to be presented when is title shown is equal to true, and then this dollar sign will turn it back to false afterward. Um, and for this alert, we're going to have a button, and the button is going to say continue, right? Because when you click one flag, you want to be able to continue and then do another flag. And then we're going to have an action. And so what should our action be? Well, when we press continue, we want to ask another question. So we'll have our action be ask question. But we haven't actually defined what ask question does. So let's do that. And let's create a new function called ask question. And this isn't going to take in any arguments because it doesn't need any. What we're going to do is we're going to shuffle the countries. Yeah, Xcode already knows. Right? Because we want it to be in a different order. And then we're going to make a new correct answer. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to set correct answer equal to int.random. This is going to create a random number between 0 and 2. Right? So let's go back to our alert right here. And this continue button, its action is going to be asking a question, right? And then we also want to make a message too. And in this message, we'll have some text, and the text is going to say your score, right? Your score is something. And we'll come back to this and we'll change the score. So let's see. When we click the flag, still nothing happens. And that's because we still haven't implemented the flag tapped function. So over here in our button, this button's action is going to be flag tapped, right? So right here, we're going to call flag tapped and we're going to put in number as its argument. So now let's test it out, right? Tap the flag of Ireland and it says correct. And your score is something and continue. Tap the flag of US, correct. Your score is something and continue. Okay, so that's kind of the most of the logic with this. We'll come back at the end and we'll make this score thing work. But let's make it look a little bit nicer right now. And in order to do that, instead of making it just one color, let's use a linear gradient. And a linear gradient has colors, it has a start point, and it has an end point, right? So let's say colors. Let's use dot blue and dot black. And then our start point is going to be, let's say the top, and our end point is going to be the bottom. And let's see how that looks. Okay, not terrible. Definitely coming together a little bit more. Maybe we can make the text. I think we already did this, but foreground style, let's make it white. And then let's make this white as well. So it's looking a little bit better, but still Not great, right? So let's, instead of using linear gradient, we're going to use this thing called radial gradient. Okay, and radial gradient, kind of what it sounds like it's going to be more circles rather than straight up and down. So we'll do radial gradient. And radial gradient, it's going to take in these stops. It's going to take in a center. Um, it's going to have an start radius and an end radius. So let's put in these stops, right? Basically, we're going to be defining our own colors. Um, we're going to be making our own colors. So we'll use this dot init, and then we'll say color. And this is kind of where we make the color, right? It's going to use like RGB values basically between 0 and 1. So let's make this one pretty red, right? So let's go red, and then let's go like 0.75. And then let's go blue, or let's go green. And we don't want a lot of green. Let's make it like 0.3. And then blue, not a ton of blue. Let's make it like 0.2. And then we're going to have a location as well. And our location, let's do 0.3. So, um, yeah. And then we're going to have our second dot in it, well, our second color, because basically what we're doing here is we're trying to have two circles. So we're going to have a comma, dot init, and then this color, let's make it more blue. So we'll go like red, maybe 0.2, green, still not a lot, 0.3, and then blue, let's make it more like 0.75. So we still have a couple more arguments, right? My vision for this, we'll kind of have the circle start at the top, right? So we'll do center, dot center. And then we also need a start radius and an end radius, right? Start radius, let's make it 200, and then let's make the end radius, let's make that 700. So let's see how that looks. I'm getting an error. We forgot to put a location for the second dot init, right? We have a colors, but we don't have a location. So let's do that. Let's set same location as green. Okay, that was not quite what I was expecting. Let's make the center up at the top. Let's do that. Okay, that's a little bit closer to what I was kind of had in mind. Um, so definitely like a little bit better. But still with this blue here over in like Ukraine, this blue is kind of like blending in. Can't really see that. So let's add like a box around that stuff. Um, so we'll go ahead, we'll go to this VStack right here. Um, and we're basically going to make a box, right? So we're going to do dot frame. And we want the max width to be the width of the screen. So we'll do width is dot infinity. And then we'll do dot padding. We'll have a vertical padding 20, and still nothing showing up because we haven't added a color. So we'll do dot background, and I want to make this kind of translucent, so we're gonna do dot regular material. Um, okay. What if we put it right there? One second. Okay, wait. Um, and then For the last thing we're gonna do, um, right now the boxes are only around the flags. I want to change that, and I want the boxes to be the box to be around everything. So one second, let me see. Maybe we could put it right there. Hmm. What if we put it out here? That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Let's so right now, I guess this is closer. We're going to make this more of a rounded shape. So we're gonna use this clip shape modifier. And we're gonna do dot rectangle because we still want it to be a rectangle, and then we're gonna make the corner radius. We're gonna make that 20. So you could see what I did there, but that is not what I wanted to do. And I think the reason for that is because we need to add another V stack. So um yeah. So let's add another V stack up here. And Um let's close it around this. Okay. Um oh, I see, because I did dot width is infinity. I wanted to do max width. Okay, there we go. All right, that's more like what I was going for. So over here in our frame, we want the max width to be infinity, right? So as wide as it can go. All right. And now let's add a title. Let's say like maybe we want to say what game we're playing, right? So let's add it. I want to add it in this VStack right here. So right now we have three VStacks. We have this big VStack, which is kind of outlined by the translucent background. We have the medium-sized VStack with the spacing, and that contains the flags and the text. And then we have this last VStack, which just contains the text. So we're gonna add a title. We're gonna say text. And inside we want to say guess the flag. That's our game name. Guess the flag. So obviously this looks pretty out of place. Let's do some like font editing. So we'll do dot font. And I want to make this kind of big, but not too big. So let's do like let's do title. And let's make it bold. Okay, that's pretty good. Um, and we're gonna change from white to black. I think black looks a little better with this background. So yeah, that's coming together pretty well. And then now I also want to add a score, right? So I want to add my score somewhere at the bottom over here, right? So I'm gonna go into this VStack and I'm just gonna add a score. So I'll do text and I'm gonna say my score is score. And then let's do some formatting, right? We'll do dot font. Let's do let's do a large title because we want this to be like fairly prominent. Let's also make it bold so it fits the rest of the fonts. And then let's change the color to white. So dot foreground style. And then we don't have to do color dot white. We could just do dot white, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, so then we have a score at the bottom and we have the guess the flag. So this is like coming together pretty well right now. Um, but let's add some space, right? Because right now everything's pretty like crammed together. So in this top V stack, we're gonna add a spacer. And let's see what that does. That pushes everything down, right? Because now there's a space at the very top of our phone. And let's add another spacer. How about down here? So that's going to create some space, right? It's going to put some space at the top and it's going to put some space at the bottom um, above this score. So that doesn't look bad. We could honestly keep that, but maybe we want to add another spacer down here. We could do that too, right? Get the score higher up. And maybe we want to add another spacer down here. All right. Okay, that looks good. And then now we do have to add a little bit more of some like logic. And that's because right now in all our alerts, remember our score is still question mark, question mark, question mark, right? We haven't actually done anything with that yet, right? So we'll add a score, right? Well, let's add a score variable. Private var, or no, at state private var score is equal to 0. And then let's also add, we don't want this game to go on to infinity, right? Maybe we just want it to be like 4 questions or something like that. So do at state, and we're also going to create a variable called showing final score, right? That's going to be like our state, right? Whether or not we want to say, okay, yeah, the game is over, like was your final score. Let's set that equal to false. So let's implement this stuff, right? When does score actually change? Well, the score is going to change when we get a question right. And how do we know if we answered a question, let alone got a question right? And that's going to be in our flag tapped function, right? Because every time a flag is tapped, that function is called. So if we get it correct right here, right? If number is equal to correct answer, we are going to increase the score by 1. And then let's decide how many how many questions we actually want to answer. Let's say we want to answer 5 questions. We're going to add another if statement, right? If oh, if we want to change the number of questions we answer per game, we're going to add another variable called number of questions. And we're going to set that equal to 0. So let's go back down to this function, right? If it's the correct answer, we're going to increase the score by 1, and then we're also going to increase number of questions by 1, right? Because every time we press the flag, that's another question answered. And we're going to do another if statement here, right? We're going to say if the number of questions is equal to 5, then well, we kind of want the game to end, right? We want to add like a final alert that says, okay, this is your final score. So we're going to change showing final score to true. And also, if the game is over, we don't want to show our title. Right? We don't want to say correct or wrong because we want the game to end. So you don't want to have 2 alerts going on at the same time. So we're gonna do is title shown equal to false. Good. Now we have this flag tap thing and we have this, but see, still, if we answer 5 questions, right, nothing's going to change, right? And the reason for that is, again, because we haven't implemented are showing title or showing final score or is title shown. We haven't implemented those. So in order to do that, we're going to implement dot alert, right? We're going to have a dot alert, and we want the alert to say game over, right? Because the game's going to end when we hit 5. And we want this alert to show up. So we're going to say is presented. We want to show up when showing title or showing final score is true, right? And then we're also going to have a button. And we want that button to say play again. And what's our action going to be when we click continue or when we click play again? And our action is going to be, it can't be ask question, right? Because then our variables are still the same number as they were before. So we need a new function, and we're going to call that reset. So let's implement reset right now. We're going to say function reset, and it's not going to take in any parameters. We need to shuffle the countries and reset the scores, right? So our score will be equal to 0. And also, the number of questions we've answered is also going to be equal to 0, right? Because we're completely resetting everything. Yeah. And now, let's go back. Yeah, we have this action here, and we're going to have a message, right? Now, we want our message to say something like, we want it to say our final score. The way we're going to do that is we're going to do this. We're going to say your score is, and we're going to use backslash, and that's going to make it so that we could actually call the variable and not just like the variable name as a string. We're going to say score. And then what is it complaining? I will deal with that after. Okay, we're gonna say score, and then we're gonna say out of, and then our other denominator, right, is gonna be the number of questions we answered. Like, so how many out of 5? So we're gonna say number of questions, and then boom. We're still getting a thing right there. I think that to syntax by me. Let me see. Yeah, you need a colon. So we want to say the message is your score is, and then our score out of the number of questions we answered. And then also over here, we had our score is question mark, question mark, question mark, right? We're going to change that to say our score. And now, also, we're going to do the same thing here. Backslash, parentheses, score. And I have an extra parentheses there. So now our game is like pretty much done, right? None of this UI stuff, just to like be clear, none of this UI stuff actually changes the logic that goes on over here with this alert and our functions, right? So now let's play and let's test it out. So France, boom. Italy, let's do this one. All right, wrong. Our score is still 1. Ukraine, there, correct. And then Nigeria, correct. Italy, boom. All right, now it says game over. Your score is 4 out of 5. And then we can click play again, and it's going to reset. And as you can see, our score is back down to 0, and we've reset everything. So let's do Italy over here, US, Poland, Ukraine. Yeah, correct. Our score is 4. Um, Ukraine again. Yeah, game over. Okay. Um, One last thing, maybe or maybe not. You guys might think this is like better or worse, but over here, when we're displaying our countries, if we want to, like everything's pretty round here, and then all of a sudden these like flags are pretty sharp. So we could do dot um clip shape, and we could just make it a capsule. Um, which I don't know if you like that more or less, but that is something that you can do. Or you could do the same thing as we did for the for this like white background here, dot rect, and then corner radius is 20, something like that. Right. Maybe you like that better. Let's make it 10. Yeah. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how you can make a game where you guess flags with Swift UI.